Greetings and salutations. This is Abe Abdelhadi. We're at the bitter truth, where we may not have all the answers, but we ask an awful lot of questions. And today, we've got the founder and chair of Free and Equal Elections. And if you're not familiar with her organization, she has done some pretty amazing things. They've held presidential debates in 2008, 2012, 2016 with some of the third-party candidates that should have been recognized as major contenders, but for the lack of a better word, our rigged system, we don't. So she's been doing an amazing amount of work over the last decade plus, and also in other events that I didn't talk about. We're going to talk about that in the hour. And so today we've got Christina Tobin. Are you there?
Hi, great to be here.
Hey, I'm really glad I'm good. I'm really glad we finally got to do this. Let's just give the listener like a little bit of a run-up. How did you get involved in politics, and then how did Free and Equal begin?
Yeah, I just, I guess even at 13 years of age, I helped my dad out with a lot of paperwork, which later on I turned out to be petition drives that he, did. And so just being around that as a kid while playing with my dolls, and around 17 years of age, my dad ran for governor of Illinois as a third-party candidate.
Wow.
And going through the whole process of what it takes for third-party candidates to get on the ballot in Illinois alone is 25,000 signatures from registered voters, while it's only 5,000 for Ds and Rs. And, Dad turned in over 60,000 signatures, and he was recommended to be placed on the ballot, but a state board of elections ruled him off the ballot.
Wait, back up. I'm sorry,
Mm-hmm.
just a quick backup, though. So he had to get 25,000 signatures, and the Republicans and Democrats only had to get 5,000?
Yeah, that's one of many, many hurdles that we have with our electoral system, one being the restrictive ballot access barriers. You mentioned another one during the opening, the really closed presidential debates. And so many more, gerrymandering, voting machines, not having alternative voting methods. But this was a time when I saw the rigged system. They saw a threat. They saw my dad as a threat. I, believe he's an accountable candidate, whether he's my father or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I've since devoted the last 20 years of my life helping to get candidates on the ballot. And Free and Equal Elections came about 10 years ago.
Okay.
So that's really where it sparked from. Back in 98.
And so even though your father got 60,000, what was the reasoning that they said he was not able to participate in the election, even though he got way more than the required number of signatures?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I don't really go into that much detail, too often, but there was one fraudulent signature gather in the petition drive, because, when you have to get that many signatures, it forces most cases for third parties, independents, to hire paid circulators. So there was one that was fraudulent, and I think it was a couple thousand signatures of the 60,000 my dad submitted. So the normal process would be you remove all the signatures from that fraudulent circulator and, penalize him. No, what the board did is they made all the signatures invalid because of that one circulator, which is just unconstitutional. They didn't want him on the ballot. I mean, it's no surprise when even Obama ran for Senate. Every single one of his competitors were knocked off the ballot. So, this is one of the rigorous, the rigged system that the two-party system, really one-party system, creates to keep candidates like my dad off the ballot. So, that was the spark, the creation of, me helping. I've collected, I think, millions of signatures, or more so organized circulators to get candidates on the ballot, and also run free and equal elections.
What party was your dad running with?
Libertarian.
Oh, he was? Okay. Wow. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I lived with them for a little while myself in California, and then I got out to Texas and found out that they're different here. So
it's an idea. It's a philosophy. I don't even think we really need parties. Let's just absorb these ideas, towards an independent platform and see every candidate as an individual that they are. I mean, that's really how I feel about the party system. It just, it becomes infiltrated as it becomes larger, attracts people who want power, and there's no mention of parties in the Constitution. So, Dad ran as a libertarian. We can see a lot of people in today's elections using party lines to get elected. I get it, but I just don't know how important parties will be in the future. They definitely are not serving human good.
Well, you know what? And we can jump into that kind of now. That was gonna be my one of my questions down the road, but now that you brought it up, so I agree with you. First of all, 100% that I don't think parties are necessary of anything. They've just become just one big corporate gangbang, and we don't get the benefit of that. And so they create a socialism for the rich and capitalism for the rest of us. So how could we get out of this system and basically vote for individuals and also keep it so that we're not all wasting our time and having 400 people run for president who are like, maybe no more insane than the current president, but I mean, not just some guy who thinks he's, the mayor of Zolob or whatever, but, like credible candidates like Jill Stein or like a Gary Johnson or like, people that have had experience, now I'm spacing on her name. Oh God, 2008 Green Party, Cynthia
McKinney.
Yes. Awesome person.
And Rosa Clemente.
Yeah. Phenomenal experience and, got no traction whatsoever because of the fact that they were running as Greens, even though they caucused with Democrats as Congresspeople. But so how could we make sure that the Cynthia McKinneys of the world would run against, the whoever else and get the recognition they need to get, but also, not have to be, I believe in publicly funded elections. I believe in ranked choice voting. But how can we start moving in that direction? I mean, it's not obvious. I wish it was overnight, but better than I. So what are some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a pretty broad question. I would just kind of, I'm going to go back into, in 2008 when I served or worked as the National Ballot Access Coordinator for independent presidential candidate Ralph Nader. I would have done it for Dr. Ron Paul too, but and overcoming the odds and getting on the ballot in 45 states plus D.C., we didn't have enough money for all 50 states, but it's, really the circulators that I hired that did that work to make that a success. Mm-hmm. And so, Ralph and I went to the DNC, and his campaign manager is the other one. They all forgot their passes, and I got one from another person on the team, and I'm like, well, this is my time, and I get time with Ralph one-on-one, and we went into the DNC, and I'll never forget this. We were looking at all the press. I could have been hundreds, right? And, I'm walking Ralph down the path. Hey, and Ralph, can we interview you now? And he goes to me, Christina, I could interview with every single member of the press here today, and I wouldn't reach but 3 to 5% of what the Commission on Presidential Debates reaches. And so that's what sparked the creation of Free and Equal Elections in 2008 when we hosted a presidential debate, first time any presidential debate outside of the mainstream Commission on Presidential Debates, which only really invites the two parties, right? Because it's run by the former chairs of Democratic and Republican parties. Anytime any other debate's been nationally televised, and that debate that we hosted in 2008 was nationally televised on C-SPAN too. But to get to your question on, something I guess around the party system, how do we break through that? I do foresee a decentralized platform, a truly independent platform, which is really what I feel Free and Equal is the forefront of achieving and doing, a platform that's an umbrella group that brings all of these amazing, whether they're artists, Hollywood, musicians, and ideas together. I think the blockchain ledger is going to be, in this decade, the solution that's going to help revolutionize our voting system and bring about political transparency. So when we have a decentralized platform, imagine an app that's called a blockchain election system app, which we are building with Free and Equal Elections and working with groups like Nexus, Colin Cantrell, and so on, and building the back end of this blockchain app. We're going to be able to, on this app, through the movement that we're building beyond our presidential debates, Free and Equal Elections, I can go into later through our United We Stand concert tour. This app is going to be the power, giving the power back to the people, where they can go on and see every candidate, whether they're running as a DNR, using a DNR party line, or even third-party line. The independent candidates will also be listed on this app, so people can actually, see who's running, maybe even click to volunteer for their campaign, click to help get them on the ballot, click to maybe even run for office themselves, register to vote through Headcount or Rock the Vote, which will be implemented into the app. So I foresee that happening in the near future.
So talk to me a little bit about Rock the Vote. I've read various things over the last years, maybe 5-8 years, where they seem to be pretty compromised themselves, are they not? Or did I misunderstand some information?
Yeah, I don't know much about. I haven't picked up on that, but
Okay.
I guess what I'm getting at is just really getting people to register to vote.
Sure.
And I get the argument from some people, oh, why should I register to vote? The flawed system and this and that. Well, the only peaceful way that I can see about us, taking our government back, which wasn't even really created to govern us, it was created to protect us.
Mm-hmm.
But the only way I feel that we're going to do that is by peacefully replacing pretty much all of them, D's and R's alike, with accountable candidates. I recently had a private call with Dr. Ron Paul, former congressman in Texas, and Dennis Kucinich was on there as well, with Cantrell of Nexus and his dad, Vector Space, Jim Cantrell, also the co-founder of SpaceX. So the five of us, and Dr. Ron Paul said, when an idea comes, nothing will get in its way, and so I do foresee an idea rising that will help us break beyond party lines, where we can recognize we agree on more things than not. And so I do feel that the United We Stand tour, that we'll be able to give all these candidates a free and equal chance of winning. I'm sorry I don't have my notepad in front of me because I've kind of messed up on the time for this interview, but so I didn't write down. I usually write down when I'm in the mode. I missed your question on that, so
That's okay.
I think
no, don't worry about it. No,
yeah,
you
Saturday morning too.
No, you didn't. No, it's Saturday morning, and I get no. And by the way, I'm drinking beer, and so there you go. And I may drop an F-bomb, which last night a good friend of mine said, "Look, you got a great show. You don't need to cuss and drink beer on your show." I said, "Yes, I don't need to, but I like it." So. Fuck off.
I'm a little foggy, though. I thought we were going to be 2 hours from now, and I aired on my end. So I'm like, let's just do this. Free, any caffeine. I'm just rolling with it. No notepad.
That's good. That's
real life.
That's and I appreciate that. I genuinely appreciate that. But and when I was asking about Rock the Vote, I should know if there was any integrity. I think you used it as an example, and I was just asking a question. But
yeah, I've heard that. And that's the blockchain ledger will allow people to see on the elections. It's an app, and all the ideas. It can do a thumbs up, thumbs down, and you'll be able to tell through the voting and would we implement, something like instant runoff voting, also known as ranked choice voting, into the app. Absolutely.
Right.
I love the work that Fair Vote is doing. Rob Ritchie, he's been a supporter, founder of Fair Vote, free and equal elections back in 2008. He helped make that presidential debate happen. So yeah, I'm all for alternative voting methods. And if people give lots of thumbs downs on Rock the Vote, we'll be able to see why.
Sure.
Maybe that'll give them a chance to fix the issue, or maybe headcount will become, the entity that helps inspire even more people to vote. So that's the beauty of the blockchain ledger. You're going to be able to see which candidates are really, are asked by their constituents, maybe people that are already involved in their community that aren't necessarily seeking to run for office, but are actually asked by their community, that is, to run for office. I see this app giving those sort of kind, compassionate, caring, accountable people a truly free and equal chance of winning.
Sure.
I do.
Well, and now that and thank you for being transparent a second ago, because I'll make my questions shorter and rant less. How's that sound? But no, you made a good point earlier about people getting out to vote, and if we could do it peacefully and not vote for the D or the R all the time. And you hear this all the time: you're wasting your vote. You're wasting your vote. And something I like to remind people of. Well, the first thing I always say is, well, if you voted for Jill Stein, she would have gotten your vote. And if a bunch more people voted for her or Gary Johnson, they would have gotten your vote. So you're not voting because you're willing to settle for this lesser of two evils crap. And I always have to remind people, when Abraham Lincoln won the election in 1860, the Republicans were only 4 years old. And he'd lost the Senate race against Stephen Douglas in 1858. And when he won in 1860, he didn't win with the plurality. He won with 39% of the vote. And the Democrats had become split, and so you had the Northern and Southern Democrats. You had the Constitutionalist Party. They only took 9% of the vote. The Northern Democrats took 29% of the vote, and the Southern Democrats took 19% of the vote. And this was before internet or telephones. All they had was Pony Express and Morse code, right? And I don't know how many states we had at the time. I think maybe 20, but the Republicans were only in about 8 or 9 states. So not even half the country. And they were still able to take the White House and the Congress. And so what stops people from thinking, are we that baked in the brain with the system that we have now that we can't even conceive of something else and we actually believe that there's two parties?
Yeah, I mean, when I talked to Dr. Ron Paul on that call, I mean, seeing me as a former congressman, he really drilled that it's not a two-party system. He said, Christina, it's a one-party system. I mean, being a congressman that he was, and people, I think he's quite loved by many. But he said it's a business, and I said, yeah, it's a business, and we're not invited to the party.
Right.
I mean, that's really it is how the really one-party system has rigged the system and left independents out in the cold. And when I say independents, that's even, third party. I see those Green and Libertarian candidates as individuals. I mean, even having helped get the Libertarian and Green Party candidates on the ballot, I've been able to see firsthand, within that there's a complete disconnect between the parties and the campaigns and how they run ballot access. I mean, there's a lot of infighting. You find over time as a party becomes larger, people who want power naturally gravitates towards the national, positions, chairs, or delegates, and so on. And there are some good chairs and there are some good delegates, but I find it to be way better on the state and even more so on the local level. So it's just kind of like almost a facade of like, what do we need these parties for in the first place? Because it seems like the ones who really benefit from it are the ones who grasp the power at the very top, take control, and cut all the good people out that started the party that had, good intentions, and then they become sour and then they don't help anymore or, burned. So that's kind of what I've seen in the decade or two on the ballot access front. But I like to focus more on John Lennon's quote, there's no problem, only solutions.
Right.
And that's where we stand at Free and Equal Elections. We keep our eye on the prize and on the solutions. And it's going to take some work, but it's got to be done. It has to be done.
Sure.
The latter's not an option.
Well, you mentioned you mentioned ranked choice voting versus the Electoral College, and I've been thinking about this maybe only in the last couple of months. But would we need an entire system overhaul to get that done? Do we need to move to a parliamentary system to get that done, or could we do it as is by just simply people voting?
Well, it's two separate issues in the sense that instant runoff voting is one of different forms of alternative voting methods. So you also have score voting, you have approval voting. We know instant runoff voting is also known as ranked choice voting. And then you have the Electoral College versus the popular vote. These are the sort of issues that we're going to have our 5th annual Electoral Reform Symposium in Colorado this November. It's kind of cool. It might be our 6th one. Definitely 5th. I should know that. But we bring together the experts that discuss these issues. So could I go into like the nitty gritty of how instant runoff voting works? Pretty well, because we've actually gone through the voting process during the symposiums of how it works and the counts, and working with even the League of Women Voters of Colorado. So that's cool. But as far as Electoral College, popular vote, free and equal stance is like, let the people decide. Let's get people elected that become informed on this. Do I think there's room for improvement from what we have as far as Electoral College? Absolutely. So I'm still kind of in a position of I'm not an expert in that world, but I definitely could see us improving things. Now, how are we going to do that? We've got to first get people in office that aren't about wealth and greed and puppets, have strings tied to the powers that be, because that's pretty much most Democrat and Republicans in office right now.
Sure.
Maybe with the exception of Congressman Thomas Massie out in Kentucky. I mean, that's like the only one I can see that seems so pure.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
so that's something to work with.
Well, there's only I mean, shoot, like everyone keeps talking about this progressive caucus and in the Congress or in the House, and I'm like, AOC, she's co-opted. You know what I mean? And Rashida Tlaib, she loved Obama, loved him, despite the fact that she's Palestinian. And you're going, all right, he did the same crap that Trump's doing. You didn't seem to mind then. No one seems to mind when their side does it. No matter what. I mean, Ilhan Omar, she's going through a lot of crap, and there's some areas that I really respect her on. But then and I know it was a little bit ago, but she's like, Obama, you're the greatest president, blah blah blah, and I'm going, dude, he bombed your country. Like, how okay are you with it when your side does it? This is when I was mentioning earlier the baked in the brain thing, and I've gone through your site and seen. You've worked with some people that everybody has. From Professor Griff to Chris Hedges. Ron Paul. You've really gotten around and met people, and have had people at your events and moderated debates with presidential candidates that are every bit as qualified, if not more so, than the people we have in office now. We have these C- brains who are easily bought, right?
Yeah, you really get it, Abe. You caught me at a great time. I'm glad we're doing this interview. I've always told myself, no matter how things go, and with free and equal elections, I always will make time for things that matter and be accessible to the people. You just can do that. And so in order for a movement to rise, it's going to be have to be deeply rooted, hence the 10 years in the making of this foundation that goes beyond the presidential debates we did, yes, in 2008. Chris Hedges was our moderator. 2012, Larry King and I co-moderated. And then in 2016, my friend Ed Asner, Lou Grant, Mary Tyler Moore Show, and I co-moderated. And then
back up a second. Larry King, the Larry King of RT now, but of CNN previously, the Larry King.
Yes.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, Larry King, that's kind of maybe how the connection. I found that RT covered a lot of our events live. They covered our event live in 2012. May have not been when they connected with Larry. But I found that they've taken a lot of people off the United We Stand stage, and have shows on RT, and that's cool. That's what it's about. So, and that's what our platform does, is interconnects and helps people, get their viewpoints out to the masses. So, but yeah, beyond that, the big thing that we're, kicking off into this year is our United We Stand tour. While a lot of people said, "Oh, Christina, you should just stick with presidential debates. That's what you know how to do." I'm like, well, cool, but that's not me. I'm not. I am my father's daughter. He's been running his own business, my dad, for 45 years, fighting taxes, out in Illinois and throughout the United States, and he's done really well with that. And I realize and recognize that it's going to take more than just the organization with presidential debates to reform our system. It's going to take that idea, like Ron Paul said. When it comes, nothing will get in its way. So we've now branched off beyond our symposium strategically into our United We Stand concert. We had our 5th annual concert last year, which has now evolved into a tour this year.
Nice.
So as that tour unfolds, simultaneously, we are in a lawsuit against UCLA it was a very clearly, I feel, politically motivated attack towards us in 2014 in canceling our first annual United We Stand concert. I mean, we had Larry King as a keynote speaker, Public Enemy, Chuck D, Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, founding members of Wu-Tang Clan, Immortal Technique, Brother Ali, Dennis Kucinich, Marianne Williamson, Ben and Jerry's. And the university system canceled this roster.
What was their reasoning?
You would think they would embrace it. They said that we failed to make payment on time, which was a lie. It was a breach of contract on their end. We had our $90K funder lined up. Deadline was like May 6th at noon. Yeah, I recently went to her deposition, and she stated clearly that the representative on behalf of UCLA, Rich Milan, in charge of the facility we had rented, Poly Pavilion, called her several times the morning of, saying that he felt I was incapable of putting on the event. He had no right to do that. The sabotage was just like, it was just so many layers. That's why we're suing them for breach of contract. And I've told my counsel I'm not going to be signing a confidentiality agreement. Let's settle and let's move forward. Whatever the arbitrator decides is great. I'm open to anything. If they want to try to settle beforehand, I don't know what's going to happen or not. But regardless, we're going into the hearing on June 24th, and it'll be done. But, full circle, here we are 5 years later, and now we're evolving into a tour, and the pulse is coming back. But the damages that UCLA did, I mean, they planted this false seed of doubt that I was incompetent, which I'm human, but I know how to put on events. I know how to get candidates on the ballot. I know how to put on presidential debates.
Yeah.
Like, it was just really, really, not
cool not even just presidential debates. I mean, debates. Didn't you guys run midterm debates as well?
Yes, thanks for doing your research. I've probably put on about a dozen gubernatorial, Senate debates, and that blockchain elections assistant app I was speaking of, we will also be integrating all of those debates into the app as well, not only our presidential debate. And imagine, through our presidential debate, I guess last cycle there were about 30 people who ran for president. I want to let the people decide through the blockchain ledger who's going to be in the first round of live debates. I want all 30 candidates to have a chance, to be in the first round of live debates. I don't even think our own debates are open enough with Free and Equal. We'll just keep opening more and more every year, every cycle that is. But we'll also integrate those local gubernatorial and those sort of debates into that app as I foresee chapters rising. And that's what's going to help bring about, again, blockchain ledger, political transparency. That's what's going to be happening in the coming years. It has to, because, like I said, the latter, this needless divisiveness that the system is really, and distractions that they're hitting us with, like the abortion issue. Okay, it's an emotional issue. We've gone through this, but we have this war and this chaos going on overseas. This is just like.
Well, you know what? And the sad thing is, most people don't even know we're at a war, much less getting our ass kicked in like 7 or 8 of them. They really don't know. I don't think people even know what happened in Iraq. And so you know what I mean? If you look at any other media besides the Post and the Times, even the Sacramento Bee does better work than the New York Times. And it's like, but you go look at Al Jazeera, go look at The Intercept, go look at other things, and you'll see that since Afghanistan, we've been getting our ass kicked like Vietnam for years. But the media got smart, and they got smarter about it. I'm not going to ask you your age. But I'm older than you. I think I am. And when I was a kid, Vietnam ended when I was 12. Okay, Vietnam ended when I was around 12.
I'm 37.
Oh, God bless you. Okay, my brother's your age.
That's on. Yeah.
I got a brother your age. 7. Okay, so, you're born 1980, 81. So Vietnam War ended in 75. I was 12 years old, getting ready to be 13. And since I could remember, 5, 6 years old, and my dad was a news junkie, so every night on the news was Vietnam, on the news. Not some far away, we're guided by the beauty of our missiles bullshit. It was like, there's, Ed Bradley standing in front of a blown out hospital, in Saigon, and they're pulling out bodies behind him on stretchers, one after the other. And he's describing this shit as it goes, right? And that's what we saw, so, then I got older. I didn't understand the meaning of it till I got older. But you see this on the news, and your buddies down the block, your friends' kids down the block are getting drafted and having to go, which is what created a protest movement. Was because the middle class was getting pulled into it. Well, they got rid of the draft not out of any morality. They got rid of the draft because they just didn't want to put the pressure on the middle class, and hopefully they'll shut up. And obviously they did, because here we are 30 years later, 40 years later, and what do we have? Right? We got the poor kids, because we've taken the jobs away, getting schlepped off to overseas, and we're getting ready to put them in Venezuela and Iran, ignoring the same playbook that we've been doing for 120 years, which is to make up a story and go in and take the people's shit. And so, it's a little bit of a digression from the point I was wanting to make was the system has, don't you think that, and I know you're optimistic and you're doing a lot of work, but isn't this why they're so entrenched? Isn't this why they're digging in their heels even more to keep their system as is? Because that's how they get paid. These distractions that you mentioned earlier, abortion, guns, gays, gay marriage, not gay marriage. These are all distractions. And they're up here at the surface, but when you dig deep, these guys all take money from the same people. And I don't know. And it kind of leads me into the next question, which is kind of why I digress a little bit, but all of that to say that, for example, with the Commission on Presidential Debates versus the League of Women Voters. Now, I'm not going to lionize or make saints out of the League of Women Voters. But, they let John Anderson in the debates in 1980 when I was in high school, right? They let Ross Perot into the debates in the 90s. They weren't above letting a third candidate in. Even if it wasn't necessarily libertarian or green, they at least would get somebody else in.
Well, no, I mean, the League of Women Voters retracted their support from the Commission on Presidential Debates in 1988. And you can look it up on Wiki and online articles from even the League directly, stating that the Commission on Presidential Debates, the CPD, has perpetuated a fraud on the American voters. And I could not agree more.
Yes.
I think the League, it varies state by state. In some states, they're really corrupt.
Oh, they are. Okay. And I was, like I said, I don't want to lionize or make them into saints. I know they're not perfect.
Some other states, they're better.
Yeah.
It's very different. It just depends on the area and who's in charge of the chapter. I mean, so it's very inconsistent.
Okay.
But there are some good ones with the League. I don't know if that's less these days or more, but I've definitely experienced a good one out in Arizona and in Colorado,
But the commission, the commission on presidential debates, it's just 100% corporate owned. It's AT&T and Pfizer and all these motherfuckers, right?
Yeah, it's run by the former chairs of the Democratic and Republican Party. Actually, in all fairness, I did have a call with the national people of the League of Women Voters a couple of years ago and told them about our debate. But it just seems to be I think our platform really attracts accountable, pure entities. So if it's a struggle, then it's, not something I'm going to really push that hard.
Right.
But yeah, it's run by the former chairs of Democratic and Republican parties. I agree with the League. The CPT has perpetuated a fraud on the American voters, creating this Wizard of Oz. There's only two parties that exist facade. And then, of course, their threshold and getting into the debates is extremely high, keeps more voices and more choices off, the debate platform. I mean, yeah, Perot did get in the debates. I'm going to say I don't think he was really welcomed. They had, since that happened, made the restrictions more challenging to where that didn't happen again. That's the CBD. That's so. Hence the need for an alternative, a truly open presidential debate to rise. And that's what we did in '08. Of course, the mainstream media tagged us as third-party debate, but we're really an open presidential debate. I mean, I still invited the Democratic Republican candidates and will continue to. And maybe someday they will accept, because our platform, has continued to grow throughout the cycle. So, and they will be treated fairly and equally, because I would not put our name and reputation at stake. I would sit there right between high-profile moderators and co-moderate and make sure no matter the person's viewpoints, that they're treated the same as all of the other candidates, because that's just who I am and what I represent through free and equal elections. So, and putting that hat on. So we'll see what happens with our presidential debates. We're planning one in 2020 and 24 and so on.
Good. And so, when does the concert tour kick off?
Well, we've had our first stop of the tour April 27th in Fort Wayne, Indiana. It was co-hosted by Heartland Communities, the 14th annual Earth Week we were part of. It was a successful event. So we're looking forward to returning next year. I'll be doing a walkthrough in the coming months at a much larger venue. And then our second stop, that was for Earth Week, right? Our second stop is going to be Independence Day weekend, July 4th through 6th, at a beautiful open piece of land healing. They do Reiki healing for veterans with PTSD. It's called Need Peace, spelled KNEAD. It's kind of cool name. And so I'm excited to go there, and that event's going to be in support of our veterans. And then our third stop will be October 5th out in Colorado. We're partnering up with Sister Winds Festival, their 11th annual festival. They're welcoming us in as part of the tour, stop, and we're going to be recognizing this is the 100th year anniversary of the women's suffrage movement, the women's right to vote. So for myself as an empowered woman, which is very unusual to lead an organization of this magnitude and for this cause, free and equal elections, you actually can go to freeandequal.org and learn more about the nonprofit organization. But it's really going to be beautiful to be a part of that event with artists that are women and men are invited to perform as well. So, and we may have a fourth stop, but those are the three that are really firm right now.
Okay, well, good
for this year.
Well, good. That's the that's when you're talking about getting the inviting the R's and the N's, or the R's and the D's to the debate, and you're open about it, and I believe that you'd be fair. I think that, what do you sense as being the pushback why they won't want to come on your debate stage?
I mean, typically, if a candidate is controlled and beholden to the powers that be, the big money, the Rockefeller, the Rothschild, the ones that created kind of like on The Creature from Jekyll Island, that book by G. Edward Griffin, the creation of the Federal Reserve Note in 1913, simultaneously the income tax, Woodrow Wilson signs in, we go into war, and the people are funding the war through the income tax, and then we have this Federal Reserve Note, which is really money made out of thin air, fractional reserve, right? So, which I totally support alternative currencies as well in the crypto world, whatever it may be, bartering, trading and all. But when you have candidates that are beholden to these sort of individuals and bankers and big money, they're not going to be attracted to our platform because our platform sees right through that. They're still welcome to come. I mean, if Trump even wants to be a part of our debate in 20, that's cool. I mean, I know people can be, positive, not positive towards them, but I just focus on the positive of him getting elected. Two things: people are more engaged than ever because of his election. I'll take it. And he's an outsider of the system. That won. That's pretty, he used the Republican Party line. Even his campaign team inquired me back in the day on the ballot access side to see what it would take to get him on the ballot as an independent for president. I'm like, whoa. I'm like, that's kind of nice to know he's even considering running as an independent for president. He wouldn't inquiry me if he wasn't, so that was cool. But, so he's an outsider of the system that used the Republican Party line to get elected. That really helps. That tells me right there an independent candidate in the future can do that.
Yeah, if they have that kind of juice,
paved the way for that.
Yeah, if they have that kind of juice, unfortunately,
and a platform.
Yeah, unfortunately,
a platform. Yeah, helps elevate them.
Well, and that's the thing is, I think unfortunately we have a tendency to be enamored of charisma more than substance, right? He could run as an independent, and he would probably gotten some juice, right? But And then even though he ran to the left of Hillary as a Republican, it didn't take long for the deep state or whoever to get his mind right. He was coming in talking about anti-interventionists and da-da-da-da. He's not doing anything like that. And now he wants to make a deal with Iran, and then, and now they keep trying to steer him back to, doing a war with Iran. They just created a USS Maine situation a couple weeks back with the Saudi tanker, and I'm like, really, you don't see that? Are you really going to buy that shit? It's as soon as money gets involved, and I don't mean money like to run things or to be a profitable business. I'm talking about it's emotionally and intellectually dishonest to tell me that someone is going to take money. I remember at the end of summer 2017, the Young Turks were suddenly all about Russiagate, right? And they were not.
Yeah, Chen Kuger.
Yeah, they weren't about Russiagate before. All of a sudden, they're about Russiagate. And I got a brother about your age, actually, and he and I are me and all my brothers are, but this one guy specifically, we kind of really vibe about the same stuff. And we were talking about that. And I said, dude, I saw the Young Turks a couple days ago. They're on about Russiagate. My brother, straight out, without missing a beat, goes, the Turks are dead, dude. And he sounded like a mob boss when he said it. I go, what do you mean the Turks are dead? He goes, dude, Katzenberg put $20 million into them last month. And I'm like, get out of here. So I look at the business section. of a couple of papers and Forbes and LA Times business section. It was in there. Katzenberg had invested $20 million into the Young Turks because they're the biggest thing on YouTube. They got all these channels. But it's emotionally and intellectually dishonest for me to say that Cenk Uygur is going to take $20 million from the number 7 contributor to Hillary Clinton, and he's not going to have a say in kind of steering their content. I'm not going to make a conspiracy out of it, but it's kind of disingenuous to say that $20 million doesn't buy a lot of influence, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could arguably say the same about Jill Stein. I mean, she honestly lost my trust, having helped her with the 2012 debates get more awareness than anything else her entire campaign in 12. And then 16 comes around and she brings on a new campaign manager. What is his name? It's probably good that it's not coming to me right now, but like ultimately, she said she'd be a part of our debate, then wasn't. It was just not cool because you see parties, and same with Gary Johnson, as they become larger and more well known, they tend to forget, who helped them get where they were. And you gotta always remember, no matter how small, big communities, where it starts. But I mean, yeah, you could, I'll definitely ask Cenk about it. I kind of remember reading an article about that. I have to look through it again, so I don't really have a take on that. Yeah. Having met Cenk and interviewed on the Young Turks a couple of times, it was awesome the way he ran things from inside. Yeah. But yeah, I did recently see that. But, Jill Stein, did the whole voter recount thing out in Wisconsin and played off of people's emotions that, right. Maybe with the recount, Trump isn't going to win. Banked, 7, 8, 9 million. Right. And now, according to sources, she has a really nice home. Their campaign manager, it's like he almost wants to be the election reform person. It's like, wait, this isn't competition. You should just join our debates. And anyway, Gary and Jill held their own debate, Abe, and they started it off. Our slogan with free and equal elections is more voices, more choices. Mm-hmm. They started off the debate with just the two of them, with 2 voices, 2 choices. I mean, it was really hurtful. I was like, what are you doing? How are you different from the Democratic and Republican parties that exclude everybody else? If you want to do a debate with just the 2 of you, do it. But why not do another debate that includes, the Green Party and the Constitution Party candidates, the guys you joined with in 12. And so that really, I feel like the people deserve. They did some great things for sure. I'm going to give them that credit. But I feel like there's going to be even greater candidates that rise in the future. Tulsi Gabbard seems to be, it's pretty cool that she's going to, would pardon Assange, Snowden, all those people if she got elected. I don't see anybody else coming out and saying that. That was wow, because it's very upsetting what's happened with Julian Assange, WikiLeaks too, and the 100%. Censorship of media. So, yeah, we can keep going. This is fun. There's so many layers, but
we got some time
going into the media and censorship. The media and censorship of the Young Turks. I mean, we were talking about the Young Turks, but the overall, Rupert Murdoch controlling, all these media entities that feed into, because it's another one of the webs of the puppets, the powers that be, that feed into this needless divisiveness and chaos. When there's a lot of lovely, beautiful things happening in the world. And that's what I see this idea focusing on, the solutions. There's no problem, only solutions. There really is within reason.
See, this is everything. And I brought up the Turks as an example because as soon as money gets in, because they did, and for 2 years they were running, and for 2 years they were running the Russiagate shit and sounded like Rachel Maddow, right? And so, and Jimmy Dore was him and his crew were the only dissenting voices on the Turks. And then, obviously he's had his show for a long time. And then when he finally left, he left tactfully and he was really cool about it. Because, when you're friends with people, I guess it whatever, it is what it is. But still, it's when money gets involved, it's emotionally and intellectually dishonest to tell me. I mean, I have a day job. I do a thing for a living. You pay me and I do this thing. Thankfully, I'm in a situation where it's a win-win situation, not a win fuck you situation. My goal is not to screw people. It's do you need this thing? Okay, cool. This thing will do this for you. Okay, awesome. And then, we do this thing and then they pay us and that's awesome. And everyone's happy. I'm not trying to put a pipeline through some poor person's backyard and gas their kids with noxious gases to up my share price, with a stock buyback. And so, to speak to your point, the Garys and the Jills of the world, accelerated to this level, and then not only forgot where they came from, but forgot what they were fighting against. If you become the thing, then you're not it's like Animal Farm. You change the Constitution on the barn door. It's still, you changed it. We've had 3 presidents now make legal what Nixon got busted for. Right? And so now it's and now Trump is getting ready to deputize. He wants to deputize the military to be his own civilian police force. Well, who gave him that power?
I know.
Barack Obama, with getting rid of, you got Posse Comitatus, which is an 1878 act that ensured that the president can never use the army as his own personal police force. Well, you got rid of that with the NDAA, and all of a sudden, gee whiz, you gave the gun to the baby, and now we got Dictator Todd in there, who wants to deputize the military.
I read about this. Yep. We're looking, we are realistically, I'm an optimist. I'm also a realist simultaneously. The reality of it is that we are shifting towards a police state full-on fascism.
Yes.
And while, Trump's take on it is the whole, why he wants to do this is for immigration, well, there's other people in the system that, the fact that we have the National Defense Authorization Act passed as well with the Patriot Act, this now means, and then if you look under the definition of what a terrorist is under the NDAA, they define a conspiracy theorist as a terrorist. So that tells me that if you're somebody that has a thought or has ideas that, because I don't really believe in even the terminology of conspiracy theorists. It's okay to have ideas and think about things, even if they're way out there or way there. And that's how we bring about solutions. We talk. And so this very clear message the system has done. Assange, I commend him for, being able to 7 years, he's, in the embassy, he's been able to buy us time.
Yeah.
And I know he knows there's an idea and a movement that's going to rise in the United States. I can feel it. I know the people around him. I've been in communication with, it's like in the Snowden and the Manning world and the Ross Ulbright world and even the Eddie Left marijuana world. Please pardon these people. But, the direction that we're going in, if you go back to the NDA and the Patriot Act and the definition of the thing before of a conspiracy theorist being a terrorist, that means that while these Army, police suddenly are immigration, well, my guess is that, well, they can legally come to somebody's door, and because they're conspiracy theorists, right, a terrorist, they can knock down their door, detain them, and make them disappear. This is how the laws, this is the reality of how the laws are lined up. And you look at Guantanamo Bay and 30,000 new prisons, individual cells they're building. It's pretty creepy. I'm like, man, the fact that I can think our government can be capable of such things, that's a problem. I don't want to go down the black rabbit hole. I just want to start with replacing a couple hundred people in Congress, which is what we're going to do. We have to. But eventually all levels of election. Levels of.
But to back up to back up on what you're talking about, and pardon me, I didn't mean to cut you off, but to back up really quickly on what you're talking about.
Oh, I was done.
Oh, okay. Well, so for example, when you mentioned that the term conspiracy theorist could be somebody that would be considered a terrorist, and that's not new.
That's the law.
That's the law. And Wilson, everyone, and Woodrow Wilson, who people think he's this, great liberal, was actually a giant prick. When he pushed through the House and the Senate and signed the Espionage Act, it was simply for him to go after guys like Eugene Debs. And the interesting thing about that is Obama, who everyone just sort of went to sleep at the wheel for 8 years. Oh, we got a Democrat in there. Okay, awesome. He used the Espionage Act 8 times in his presidency, which was more than any president combined since Wilson. And he went after the Chelsea Mannings of the world. He went after the Snowdens of he went after whistleblowers. And Trump seems to, steaming right in. He's not going to do anything different. And the conspiracy theory, when people tell me that, they go, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. I quote George Carlin, I don't have to have a big theory. I don't have to have a bunch of people in a room smoking cigars coming up with something. All I need is 1 or 2 actors who act in the interest of their peer group. And now I have a conspiracy by default. And it doesn't matter.
It's not even...
Okay.
Yeah, the word conspiracy has such a stigma to it, though, Abe. It's like, when Woodstock happened and suddenly, suddenly there's this label of hippies. it's like the system creates these labels,
right?
Conspiracy.
Well, that's why they say
theorists to
collusion.
take
That's why they say
away our
that's why they say
power.
collusion with this Russiagate crap. They say collusion versus conspiracy because the media wants to reserve the word conspiracy for their own use. Do you see what I mean? Like, when did you ever hear Rachel Maddow say, yes, Trump conspired with Putin? No, they say colluded. Fox, CNN, they all say colluded. They don't say conspiracy. Because in 1968, when Jim Garrison brought the only case against anybody concerning John F. Kennedy's assassination, and the Zapruder film 5 years was in the vault, and Jim Garrison subpoenaed that, and for the first time on television, Americans saw the president's head getting blown off. And anyone who ever shot a gun knew that the single bullet theory was bullshit in a second. No way was there 3 bullets there. No fucking way. You got 4 injuries to Connolly. You got 3 to the president. How are there 4 bullets there? There were 3 bullets there. There were 7 bullets minimum, right? But if you believe that, then you are now a conspiracy theorist. And who came up with that? The fucking CIA when that film came out. And that was Jim Garrison risking his life because he could have been 86th like everybody else. And he was the DA of New Orleans, and he could have easily been assassinated. And he just passed away a few years back. He's as a sitting judge. But my point in all of that is the CIA invented the term conspiracy theorist and put that stigma on it, like you're saying. So to me, it's like to take that word back. There's conspiracy theories, of course. I think the moon landing did happen. Okay, we could discuss that, but I think it did happen. But a conspiracy fact is that Hillary Clinton and the DNC rigged the primaries against Bernie Sanders. That is a fucking conspiracy fact. It's not a theory. It's a fact. The superdelegate system alone says that was a fact. She got 27 of 20, and he got 23 states in the primaries. And we all know that West Virginia, Michigan, Minnesota, and Hawaii were superdelegated. Al Franken famously voted against the will of the people in Minnesota to superdelegate the primary to Bernie Sanders, or Hillary Clinton, even though the people voted for Bernie Sanders, right? So, and I don't mean to be so forceful, but I'm just simply saying we have to take that word back because conspiracy is a felony under law. Collusion doesn't mean shit. Collusion means you and I were talking about where to go to dinner. We colluded to go get Italian, okay? Conspiracy is what people do to commit a crime or to commit a tort. That's a legal definition. And so it's time for us to start taking that back and fuck this corporate media shit. These guys make up their own language and we just take it. Yeah. You know what I mean? We have to, what you are doing is 100% correct and right. Because you're working at taking systems back for folks. That's what I think you guys are doing.
Well, what's interesting, I'm hearing pretty newly in the network too, with the synergy of elections, with free and equal elections, really uniting with technology, creating something unrecognizable. Dennis Kucinich actually messaged that to me, and I couldn't agree with him more. Former congressman out of Ohio, that was gerrymandered out of office. Another rig, they use that to knock good candidates off the ballot. But what I foresee happening is when we get these accountable people elected, I'm told Congress is key. So, you replace a couple hundred seats there. That's really not that hard. It's a couple hundred seats. There's far more of us than there are of them. Mm-hmm. It's going to take work. But, when you look at the history of the American Revolution, it only took 3% of the people to unite an idea to bring about, change for, and then you have the Bridge of Selma, Montgomery, Bloody Sunday, that one day that changed America, the Voting Rights Act of the 65, Ramsey Clark drafted that. Attorney General at the time under B. Johnson and Kennedy, whom, by the way, I've sat with, and he told me exactly what happened at the Kennedy assassination. Wow. So that's a whole nother thing coming from the actual former Attorney General himself. So I hear you very much so. But, on the United We Stand front, as the blockchain ledger helps to get these accountable, really independent-minded candidates elected, some say that even under the blockchain ledger, this is what more. I've gone to socialist events. I've gone to full-on anarchist events. Some say the blockchain ledger can almost like replace what government is. I'm going to be reading some books on that. But free and equal elections, we don't take a stand on like if people want more government. I'm finding most pretty much want less. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to cut back, whether it's 10, 20, up to 80% back to the origin of the Constitution. if people find the system works well right there peacefully, okay. But something about this blockchain ledger where people can actually don't even need people in office and power, where they can use a ledger to vote within their own community, for ideas and what they want, is kind of fascinating. So I'm just starting to learn about that. But hey, those are the kind of ideas we're going to have on our platform.
Nice.
All across the spectrum. As the words of Martin Luther King, I could not agree with him more. The key in bringing about, I think, peace is really through nonviolent action. So that's all we ask on our stage, is a peaceful message, whatever it may be.
Well, I mean,
we embrace and welcome. We're all inclusive.
Well, forecasting a little bit into the future. I mean, I know you're not a soothsayer, but you've been around and you know your history. We've talked a little bit before. I think you're one of the more informed people I know personally. And again, I thank you for coming on the show, because you make me look smart. But you what do you see happening in the future? I mean, can we do this peacefully? I mean, or are we going to turn into France, where you got 500,000 people showing up around 2,500 protests because they just finally have had it?
Well, I mean, it's you can even look at Egypt and the square and the people, and then suddenly that became co-opted. So it's going to be important to have a foundation that's deeply rooted, and to have a founder of that the people can do their research and see the consistency and trust. But it's also going to be important for the movement to spark and really ignite, essentially overnight, kind of like the Ron Paul money bomb happened back in the day. Whoa, we raised $1 million overnight, and that's was a really big, breaking through onto the other side, right? Moment of giving a technology, giving candidates like him a bit more of a free and equal chance of winning. But now we've got to raise the bar to it being an idea, a movement, a platform that unites, whether it's Hollywood from the Ed Asner and Larry King, so the music industry of Chuck D of Public Enemy, to Michael Franti, to Joan Baez and Neil Young, to the independent media of Collective Evolution, the Mind Unleashed, Free Thought Project, which has wrongly been censored, and to the political. I mean, to have these individuals and these entities and so on come together. I see them supporting these candidates, whether it's playing a song at their at their campaign events, or independent media having them on their platform to be heard. And that's really what the United We Stand concert tour is at the forefront of achieving. I'm already going to Colorado. The doors are opening for venues like Red Rocks Amphitheater. I definitely could see us being at Madison Square Garden. We might be on an open plot of land. I mean, Woodstock style. So we have to have a direction. What Egypt didn't have, these other countries, France, didn't have a direction, a solution-based direction for the people to go towards. And that is what the beating heart of Free and Equal Elections blockchain election assistant app is. It is the direction of taking the power back to the people in your hands, and essentially getting people engaged in the voting and the electoral process. I ran for office. I ran for statewide office. I think I was 27 years of age for Secretary of State of California. If I can do that, if I can run for statewide office, 27, you can run. I'm in front of an audience. I'll point. You can run, and you can run. You can do this.
Don't say me, though.
This is just what it's going to take.
Don't say
we
me.
We all have different roles. We all have different roles.
Yeah, I have no intention.
I have no intention of running. People are like, will you run again? I'm like, nope. My role is to help get accountable candidates elected. I'm doing my duty with Free and Equal Elections, and then some. And my role is to help get candidates on the ballot. I have no desire to run. I did it once to really say, hey, I did it, so I can be in a position to say, everybody else, you do it once.
Yeah.
But it's I want to have a bit of a personal life too. So I know for me in this chapter, I'm good with the foundation and petitioning company. I do some jewelry design on the side too.
Yeah.
So
enjoy your want to enjoy your life. I mean, a couple of years back, I was toying with the idea of running for assembly out here, and I lasted a month. Just getting. I had a couple of handler guys that were helping me, and it wasn't for the major parties. It was for a third party, and ironically enough, the Republicans did not run against the Democratic incumbent in this particular district. And it was just, I finally, realized that I was not vibing with these guys at all. Good people, but just not on the same page philosophically. And then it was just kind of petty. The only reason I really wanted to run was to have a press conference so that I could steal an old Bill Hicks joke from 1991. You know, or if the press guy says, "Hey, so Mr. Abdelhadi, have you ever done drugs?" And I was going to say, "Sir, that question is beneath you, and because of my use of hallucinogens, I see through you." And that was the only reason I was even considering running, to steal a joke from 30 years ago. And so I was like, maybe I'm not cut out to run. And I'm just, man, it's a lot. It's a lot of people skills that I myself do not have. I mean, you are a genuinely kind person, and I'm not saying this as a dismiss, or like a diss, or you have from what I've talked to you and hearing you this last hour, almost over here, you're a good person. You genuinely like people. I'm basically kind of a misanthrope, and it's hard for me to pretend or to be nice to someone, even though I should, where they're coming from and hear them. I'm not good at that. And that's what it takes to run for office and to serve the people, because that's ultimately what you're doing. You're running not for power, you're running to serve the people. And if I'm sort of like, I don't like you, that's not a good place to start. But I like folks enough and I care enough to at least want to, do something like this, where I bring people like you on to talk about things that are going not the way that it would be beneficial for all of us, right? And so that's kind of, where we find ourselves. And I'm going to have to start wrapping up here. But do me a favor really quick. You said this in the beginning. Can you give us the website address again? And I'm going to put it in the body of the show. We're on all these different platforms, and there's always a description of the show, and I want to have this in there. So it's freeandequal.org, correct?
Correct. Free and equal, ANDequal.org. And I didn't say it, but our mission is to broaden electoral choices through education and direct positive action. So as a 501c3 nonprofit, we welcome your support. Have I been offered huge money, Abe, like $500,000 from corporations to, co-opt this movement? Heck yeah, I have. Have we had the system, the university system, try to shut us down? Have I had to, the stories go, I might write a book sometime in my 40s probably, or
Sure.
50s, who knows, but,
Sure.
but I mean, it's just not for sale. Compromising is what has gotten our nation into the issues, the problems that we have today. We have really come from a place of seeing all of these people in the world, throughout the world, that are needlessly suffering, dying, being harmed, and it's just, I will continue to do this for the rest of my life. It's my calling. I feel like I'm just getting started, and since I'm only in my late 30s, and the knowledge I have now is nowhere where it's going to be years and even decades to come. So
All right.
I'm excited to see a movement rise that brings individuals like Kucinich and Dr. Ron Paul and Ralph Nader and Jesse Ventura and many more together, and the people I mentioned earlier in this call as well, on the media side and the music and the Hollywood, all together on this platform, really essentially to bring about love and peace and compassion, not only throughout the United States, but the world. So you can go to freeandequal.org, and we always welcome your support. We
Excellent.
are a nonprofit, so it's a tax write-off.
Well,
thank you for what you're doing, Abe.
Well, listen,
we all just giving back.
I tell you, I don't use the word blessed often because I don't usually play in that realm, but it has really been a great time having you on the show finally, and I'm really grateful for your time. I'm really, really grateful for your time and coming on. I know you're busy, and so I genuinely appreciate you taking some time out to talk to us and to, like enlighten listeners as to what's going on. And on that note, I guess we're going to have to start wrapping up. Folks, our guest has been Christina Tobin, founder and chair of Free and Equal Elections. You can go to freeandequal.org, and as she mentioned earlier, you can contribute to the organization if you want. And if you're just, probably catching this at the end of something else, hopefully you heard the entire hour. I'm sure you did. And again, folks, you can always become a bitter pill by visiting patreon.com/The Bitter Truth. And again, you heard a lot of things today, I'm sure, but if this stuff makes you uncomfortable, it's supposed to, so sleep tight.